And our next speaker is Jeremy Friend. Jeremy Friend.
Oh my God, look at the mug on that dude.
Oh. So quick intro, Jeremy is also a letterer and an illustrator. He's been doing design work for the past 13 years now. Some of his clients include Hershey's, YouTube, McCormick, Coach, Entertainment Weekly, just to name a few. And in addition to that, he also teaches lettering, design, and typography. And Jeremy is a fierce Zoom dancer. So thank you, Jeremy. Give us some nice moves here. Woohoo! Here you go. So
is that like Jeremy, the Carlton? I can't do the Carlton.
I will let you take over the screen and I will give the mic and you go.
All right. Okay, everybody. My name is Jeremy Friend. I'm going to be talking about making some bold moves. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to follow what Crystal just did because that's a pretty amazing story, but I'm going to do my best to keep that amazing energy going. Crystal, I really enjoyed hearing about that, actually. That was quite an incredible journey. And I love your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. My journey is kind of the same, but a little different at the same time. And I'm going to talk to you about my life becoming, a freelance lettering designer by making a series of bold moves in my life. Things that were a little risky, things that were, not of the norm. So, but let me introduce myself. Like I said, I'm Jeremy. And I make custom typography, custom lettering. A lot of what I do, I'm kind of a perfectionist with what I do. I always want my curves to be super perfect, right? And I feel like I've always been that way in my life. A little tidbit, little snapshot here of some goofiness and some events that happened in my life, right? But I grew up playing baseball. I was kind of a sporty kid, right? Had like superhuman athletics, which is how I got into lettering, obviously. Like look at this picture. What am I doing? I'm like flying on a park bench, like circa 1977, 78. Like, I don't know. Or, always dressing like a nerd with broken glasses. It was literally my Halloween outfit for like 10 years in a row, like always the same one. This picture down in the lower middle, that is me. I was in the US Marine Corps for a while. And that's a little snippet of my working process when I was doing some work for Union Craft Brewing down in Baltimore, Maryland. So just a little glimpse into some facets of, who I am, what I do, where I come from. And I actually grew up in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. So it's kind of a rural area, you guys. It's not a city. It's not known for design. It's a lot of farms, right? Not much happening there. So even being exposed to arts was definitely a hard thing. Some of my work, this is just a snippet of some of the work I do. Myself, I try to learn every style that I can. I try to really just experiment with things that, maybe I haven't tried or maybe I haven't done before. I might have seen something sort of like it before, but I do like to push the envelope and see what can happen. A lot of these were for clients. The Tahoe Tessie Seltzers, that one was for a collaborative effort with Jen Borer. She is an illustrator out of York, Pennsylvania. We collaborated and made some great, drink packaging for Tahoe Tessie Seltzers out in Nevada. Some more styles for you. Like I said, I try not to really pigeonhole myself into any one style. And I'll talk about that a little bit towards the end. So all that work you just saw, it didn't start that way. I knew at an early age that I wanted to do something with art. I was constantly drawing. I was constantly making things with my hands. And, you know, as a kid, you don't really think about, you know, what that would take when you're an adult and you're just trying to, you know, make something happen. We don't think about that. One of the things that really, really helped form where I was going was an incident that happened with my mother. I call this the Darth Vader story. I was obsessed with Star Wars for a long time when I was a kid. And one of my favorite characters, because he's just so damn mysterious, was Darth Vader. We didn't know anything about this guy. He's a clearly tortured soul, right? And it would be a while before we find out that it's a true redemption story, right? And, you know, the things that he did was out of love, right? Like, he was a mysterious character. I was in love with this guy, right? I was drawing him one night. My mom had some friends over, and I was drawing on some lined notebook paper with a ballpoint pen. And as she's saying goodbye to some of her friends out the door, right, I'm nagging on her sleeve. I was so proud of this drawing. Guys, I wish I still had this drawing to show you. I was so proud of this drawing because I had taken the time to like do shading and stuff. Like I was trying to show a little bit of like dimension, that it wasn't just flat, right? And I didn't really know how to do it. I was just sort of doing it. And I showed my mom, and she was like at the door saying bye to people. And I think I was interrupting her. I think I was agitating her. I said, "Mom, look what I drew." And she goes, "That's nice, honey. Wow, that looks really good. Did you trace that? That's a nice tracing." I was like, "No, Mom, I drew this." And she's like, "We'll talk about this later." And I was like, "Oh, okay." She gave me the eyes. So I just knew. I was like, all right, I'm backing off. As soon as the door closed and she said bye to the remaining folks, she sat me down at the dinner table. Mind you, my mother is a person who worked 3 jobs, you know, and was seemingly always tired. She sits me down at this table, and she looks right at me and she goes, "You know how I feel about lying." And I just kind of sunk. And I said, "Mom, not lying. I drew this." She just gave me like a long, hard stare. She reaches over, pulls out another piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, puts it in front of me, and she says, "Do it again." And I tore into it. I was drawing. I was probably halfway through the damn thing. And I looked over at my mom, and she was in tears. She was sobbing. It was 2 or 3 weekends after that, she signed me up for painting lessons with a local artist named Ruth Gibble, who opened her studio on Saturdays for about 4 to 6 hours and had about 10 students, right? She taught mostly oil painting. And guys, I found my first oil painting. Do you guys want to see it? It's from 1985. I was 10. Look at the date. So this is the product of my Darth Vader story. And I just knew from then on, I was in love with like the scenery of a studio, the smell of a studio, the energy of being around other people who were painting and making things, right? I loved this. So as time went on, you know, high school moved into me going into the military. This is where my series of really bold moves begins. I joined the fucking military. Who does that? Right? So I joined the US Marine Corps at age 18, right out of high school, because I came from a family that didn't have any money. Like, my mom was working 3 jobs, now maybe 4 to pay for oil painting lessons. And my grades weren't the best. I was kind of a screw off in school. I was always drawing, daydreaming, skateboarding, playing drums, doing everything but my homework. So me getting into a college was probably like just a far off dream. And nobody in my family has ever gone to college. Everyone's been like a blue collar worker. I joined the military because one day at high school, they had shown up and they said, hey, we give money for college through the GI Bill. You can save money for college later on. Awesome. Like, where do I sign up? This sounds like a good deal, right? Well, lo and behold, guys, the Marine Corps was not an easy job, for sure. I was a combat infantryman, a ground troop, right? And even after the Marines, to save even more money for college, because I didn't have quite enough, I joined the US Army because they were offering money up front to enlist with them if you had prior service. So basically, they didn't have to train you, right? So I joined the Army 101st Airborne Division for another 4 years and served as a paratrooper. So I did 8 years total. When I was done, but I had all this money I could spend on college. So I went and attended the Minneapolis College of Art and Design in Minnesota, MCAD. Great school. I love that place. I love Minneapolis. And that was my second bold move, was putting myself through college. I don't know how often that happens these days, but I'd like to think it happens a lot more than we think. But 4 grueling years of school, and I stuck it out. It was like the second biggest thing I had done that was a major accomplishment. 1, being the military, and 2, now graduating from college. Guys, graduated in 2006, and I was the first person in my entire family to earn a college degree. And the best part was, I came out debt-free. Would I go back and join the military again? Fuck no, I would find a different way. But the fact remains is that it was something that I needed to do. It was a means to an end to get to where I wanted to be. So after college, my discovery and revelations in my skill set was I always had decent handwriting in school. And when I was in the Marines, I spent some time in Japan, and I got to see some Japanese brush artists make some beautiful marks. So I didn't know it then, but in the back of my mind, I sort of fell in love with this kind of mark making. And so I started to research it a little bit and started to, look up brush lettering and started to learn brush lettering. And man, was it frustrating at first, super frustrating. Nothing was perfect. And it's because I didn't really know letter anatomy. Like, I wasn't paying attention to how a letter is actually created. Sure, in design school, we learn typography and we learn layout. We don't learn actual letter anatomy. That's not something that we delve into. So that was something I did on my own. And I started to do this lettering stuff on the side. Like, it was how do I make this into something? I love doing this. I started posting it on Instagram. I started getting people offering to do work with me and offering to pay me to do work, right? And I was like, wow, $50, $100 at a time, right? This is awesome. At the same time, I was working a day job with an architecture firm in Baltimore as a senior graphic designer in the marketing department. So, but I would constantly come home and just daydream and moonlight as this, wannabe lettering artist who was sort of finding my way and learning as much as I could. Is this a thing? Could I make this a job? And if so, what's the next big move I got to make? How do I do this, right? I didn't know shit. So what I did was I constantly worked. I would come home from work, do the dinner thing, the kids thing, and then, like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, man, I would retire to my little hole where, I started drawing letters and doing phrases and all the cool trendy things that were happening. Like, it went through these phases. You guys know what I'm talking about, the trends. Like, oh, let's put lettering on mountain scenes and be like all adventurous and shit. Like, yeah, I did all that stuff. Like, the trends were there, right? And everyone did it. But those trends were useful because you could learn things from those trends. So I constantly was working and studying this letter anatomy. And as I worked, I found that my letters started to feel better. They started to feel more balanced and weighted. And I really wanted to make this my day job. How do I make this my day job? Because I tell you guys, my day job at the architecture firm was sucking the soul out of me. It was like an hour and a half one way in traffic to drive from where I live to Baltimore, Maryland. And then another hour and a half back sitting in traffic. So 3 hours a day in the car of wasted time that you can't get back. Just for a job that I kind of wasn't feeling fulfilled in and wasn't having any fun in. Like I always wanted to get home to do the shit I really wanted to do. How do I make that happen? Again, sitting in that car, I knew that the change had to come sooner than later because I started to have panic attacks in the car, right? I was not happy to the point that, hands would go numb on the steering wheel. This was not healthy. Whatever was happening in my life was not healthy. And I needed that happiness to return. And I needed it to return again, sooner than later. The realization sunk in that I really needed to just take the plunge. And the reason I say that is because one day a singular email came to me while I was at my day job at the architecture firm. And it was from Entertainment Weekly. I sunk in my chair and my eyes popped out of my head and my nose fell off and I went bald. Like all kinds of shit happened when I read this email, right? I forwarded the email to my marketing manager and I stood up and I looked at Sharon and I said, read that. She read it and then she looked at me. She goes, you have to go home right now. So they let me go for the day to go work on this. Super special moment because I lived in Minneapolis. They wanted me to do the lettering for the cover of Entertainment Weekly when Prince passed away. And I had 5 hours to do it. 5 hours. Oh, and they were only paying me like $600. Like it was pennies, right? Who cares? It was Entertainment Weekly. I didn't care. It was like my first like big gig. So went home, ground it out, right? Guys, I still have the magazine here, right? It's here, right? And there's nothing like seeing my name next to Prince's head right there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. Okay. Very special because I played drums and I was in numerous bands in Minneapolis and we always played at his club called Quest and the Ascot Room, a magical place. So when that email came through, this hit me hard. This was my jumpstart. This was my realization. I needed to make this a thing, take that chance, and make my next bold move. I had to do it. So I jumped ship. When it came time for my review at the senior graphic design position, they sat me down. And I said, I'm going to save you guys some time, putting in my 2-week notice. Put my 2-week notice in the same day that Hershey's came knocking for some custom lettering for a project. That's when I knew. I was like, all right, I'm going to ride this wave. I got to let this happen. Got to keep moving with it. Guys, I was never so happy and just riding such a high. This was an amazing time happening. And then the hard stuff hit. I didn't know that much about doing business, right? Like I didn't know that much about budgeting for a business, right? There were times when, for a month straight, no jobs would come in, no work would come in. And I wasn't doing the marketing I should be, but I was hustling it pretty hard. The cold emails, the social media stuff, like putting stuff out there, sharing links with people and my website and handing out business cards. I was doing all kinds of stuff, right? No one was buying in for a month here and there, right? You'd start to fall behind on the mortgage, right? Because, wow, the work really dried up after those big jobs, right? And there comes a time when I had $1.43 in my bank account. This was a surreal and super impactful moment Never had I had this low amount of money in a bank account. This was eye-opening for me. But also, guys, the positive portion, it was a learning point, right? And even though I had $1.43 in my bank account, I was the happiest I had ever been. I was still making the work that I wanted to make. I did not go running back to the architecture firm. I didn't want to work in a studio or the agency. I did not want to do that. I wanted to do what I was doing, and I just needed to find ways to get people to see me, to hire me. So my very busy, right? I just started putting in the work. I started making projects that weren't necessarily for anyone. But in order to get that attention, I had to have the portfolio of work to prove I could do this kind of lettering. So I was on a quest to become an expert. I needed to know and make sure that clients know that they have full confidence in my ability to execute something, because I know that that was going to keep the work rolling in. Word of mouth is so strong. Plus, your portfolio speaks volumes. If you can execute super well, adhere to a schedule. This was all something I was working on at this point, learning all the styles. I just needed to know that everything I was doing was going to go somewhere, right? And I really needed to provide proof that if someone came to me for this style and someone came to me for this style, I should be able to do them all. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself with just one style of lettering. I want to be able to do it all, to broaden my horizon and to cast a wider net of potential clients. Because if you only do like a graffiti style, you're this narrow, and only a certain percentage of clients are looking for that one lettering style. If you broaden that horizon into other lettering styles, that net becomes tenfold. And now clients looking for this style will come to you, and clients looking for this style will come to you. And man, did that make all the difference. Once you become that expert, it's all over. They're not going to go to anybody else. They're going to come to people who are confident. And once you know that you are the person that they're going to come to, which is what I discovered, was you can control your own destiny. You know your worth. You can control your prices. And that in itself is the direct product of my low learning point of $1.43. And it's such a weird process and journey to go through. It's like riding those waves of emotions. It's like going through a breakup, right? You're like, oh my God, what happened to me? So folks, for me, these series of moves that I made in my life really helped solidify where I needed to be in my career and what makes me happiest and what makes me, allows me to support my two teenage kids and, live in a house and have my own home studio and, still teach at colleges and universities on the side because I do still love teaching. These things all sort of came together over this weird, long, hard journey of sorts. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, this has been kind of magical. High points, low points, all the in-betweens. And I love what I do. So I want to thank you guys for letting me talk with you guys tonight. Feel free to connect with me. I'm not on Facebook. I let go of Facebook like 6 or 7 years ago. I do Instagram. Well, we'll see for how much longer. And my website. So guys, seriously, I appreciate you all coming. I was going to say TED Talk, but that's probably really cliche. Who is this TED anyway? Whatever. But thank you all very much. Seriously.